Hello, hello. I hope you guys are doing well. All right, so today I'm going to talk about thyroid health and fertility, and this isn't going to be your typical thyroid talk. Um, there's a couple different reasons for it. So I feel like when we're working on fertility, we're working on specific hormones or specific imbalances, we can get very hyper focused on one thing and tend to forget that there's so many different parts of the body, so many different parts of the system involved when it comes to hormonal health. So as it pertains to thyroid, a lot of things kind of happen with this. So what I find is that either one, people haven't been getting their thyroid tested. They will have all the other numbers, all the other hormone numbers. They've even gone through some fertility procedures, some different medications, but their thyroid has never been tested. The other scenario I find is they've had their thyroid tested, but they were only tested for TSH. They were only testing to see if there was thyroid stimulating hormone in the system. Now, there are so many additional things that need to be tested when it comes to thyroid. The third thing that I run into is that they have had an entire panel done, and then everything comes back fine, but they still do not feel very well. They still have ovulation issues. They're still having low progesterone, different hormonal issues. And they still don't feel great. They still have a lot of the things like cold hands and feet, low body temperature, losing hair, yada, yada. So I always find testing helpful. I always find getting as much information as we possibly can to be a really good thing. So with that being said, a lot of times some things will still not show up even though it's showing up in our bodies, right? And then people just kind of get pushed aside. So when it comes to thyroid, I want to invite you to take a step back and to kind of look at this as a bigger picture. So we have something called the endocrine system. And I did a class on this last night. Over 700 of you registered for this class. It was an awesome class. Everyone loved it. But what I talked about in this class was looking at the bigger picture, because the end result of either having low TSH levels or having all your tests come back fine, but your body is still giving you signs that there's something off, or if you're not ovulating, low progesterone, you're trying all the things, but it's not changing, we need to take a step back. There's a whole system, there's a whole thing that's behind all of this. And a lot of it is the endocrine system. So I'm going to quickly talk about the endocrine system. This is made up of a lot of different glands that do a lot of different things in the body, but as it pertains to fertility, there's some specific glands that we focus on: the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the parathyroid, pancreas, thyroid, the adrenal glands, the pineal gland, and the ovaries. Did you know the ovaries are part of the endocrine system? Yes, they are hormone secreting glands, and the testes is the male equivalent. So sometimes what can be happening is if we are having different signs of having thyroid issues, even though our tests come back fine. So let's talk about some of those signs real quick. A couple things I see pretty often is low temperature. So a lot of the women that I work one-on-one with, I requested them to fertility chart. And this is one of the many, many reasons I ask for that, is because I want to see what their body temperature is before ovulation and kind of what the average is of that and where they're at. So generally what I'm looking for is if their temperature happens to be 97.8 or lower, or some version lower than that, or it does dip and go up and dip and go up, then I'm going to be doing some stuff to help support not only the thyroid, but the rest of the endocrine system. So there's a whole cycle that can happen of feedback from the different glands that could be causing different issues. So for example, the hypothalamus is also responsible for body temperature. The hypothalamus is what communicates to the pituitary. The pituitary is the master gland in the body. The pituitary is what's going to control and communicate to the other glands, such as the thyroid, to release hormones. So when you're testing for TSH, that's actually a hormone that is produced by the pituitary that goes to the thyroid for the thyroid to produce thyroid hormone. So if the body is producing enough TSH, but doesn't mean that the thyroid is necessarily functioning well. That's why you want kind of a whole full panel and to look at that. Also, there's a lot of things that can be blocking receptor sites. So you could be secreting message hormones, asking the different glands to do things, but they're not able to receive the message because different toxins, heavy metals, different things are blocking the receptor sites. There's a lot of different reasons that these things can happen. So that's why I always look at the bigger picture and support the root. What I mean by supporting the root is making sure that we're also supporting the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Those are neglected a lot, but they're like the starting point. They're the beginning of the race, per se. So that's something I always focus on. And I feel like those are part of the endocrine system that's being affected the most, because there are certain elements that can affect those glands that can make it through the blood-brain barrier. So that's the protective mechanism in our brain that prevents like toxins and different bacteria and things from getting to our brain, because if that happened, we would totally be screwed. We would be in big trouble. But there are certain things that can make it through that blood-brain barrier that we're exposed to on a daily basis that can affect those glands. So the reason I bring this up is I'm preparing to work with a client here at like 1:30 today. And I was looking over her chart, and her chart, she's focusing on my progesterone dropped at this point of my cycle. My progesterone's low. What do we do? How do we proceed? Well, I end up looking at the first part of her cycle and being, okay, well, she is ovulating, but what's another reason her progesterone could be low? And I look at her body temperature, and it is consistently below 97.8. Sometimes it's 96.4. Sometimes, it's kind of has a zigzag, but it's consistently low. So that's showing me we need more endocrine work. Yes, progesterone's obviously the end goal. We need progesterone to be healthy, but that's not what's actually happening. There's something that's happening before, because the body's trying to produce the progesterone. It has a nice little rise after ovulation that's happening from the follicles, but there's not enough to sustain through the end of the cycle, and then spotting happens and so on. So the approach I take a step back. Let's support the hypothalamus. Let's make sure the pituitary is involved. And also, let's look at some of the other glands and see if these other things are showing up in our life. So this is a big, big topic, obviously, but I just wanted to bring this up because it's understandable that the focus would be, how do I increase my progesterone? And sure, we could just add some progesterone cream, right? Or we could just use some Vitex and try to get that going. Even though she's ovulating, I wouldn't personally choose Vitex at that point. But we're not looking at the underlying, and the underlying is going to be really important, because what if adrenal imbalance is involved and that's causing some of this? What if there's some other things that we really have to focus on? If there's constant cortisol that's being produced because of the adrenal glands, because of consistent stress, the body is going to reroute the materials from making sex hormones into making stress hormones. So these are all things that are good to look at, and why I like to support overall health of different systems, because then the body's able to function as it should. We are not one gland, as we are not one organ or one system or one arm. But I know kind of on your own, that can be really overwhelming. You're like, what in the world? Like, how do I even start? Like, I don't know. Where's the thyroid located? Where is the pituitary located? So that's where educators like myself are here to help, so that we can make this as simple as possible for you. So if this is something that interests you, if you're like, I've been feeling tired, I've been feeling all these different things, but I haven't been able to pinpoint what's going on. My class, I can send you the link to the replay, or I'll put the link to the replay in my stories once I repost this. And you can watch the class on the endocrine system and fertility. It is really eye-opening. It will help you to feel empowered to know here's how the endocrine system can be disrupted at the root, and what we can do to help support it, so that there's this trickle effect that ends up working in all these different areas for our energy levels, our sleep, the quality of our sleep, our hormones because of our ovaries or our thyroid, all of these different areas. So let me know. You can either send me a message to get that link, or you'll find it somewhere here. I'll post it under the video on YouTube. I'll post it under the video on Facebook, so that we can kind of get to the root of all this. So that's a couple different things to take away from this. Is fertility charting is very helpful because of all the feedback it gives you. One of those feedbacks is if there's possibly something going on with your thyroid because of your body temperature. That gives you feedback on your progesterone, where your progesterone's at, if and when you're ovulating. You can't tell if you're ovulating from OPK tests. OPK tests are just telling you when your most fertile time is. That if you were going to ovulate, this would probably be when it happens. Okay, so a lot of people do think OPK tests are telling them that they're ovulating. That is not necessarily the case. But anyways, I hope you guys found this topic helpful, something to think about, knowing that there's a bigger picture as it comes to endocrine health, but it also should give you some peace of mind, because it's not the end of the road if you haven't figured out with trying that one thing. And that one thing may have just been focusing on the progesterone levels or focusing on just TSH. Okay. All right. Well, I hope you guys have a great day.